Welcome to this episode of Chatting with Staxx. I'm your host, Bill Staxx, and today I got Larry Rolla. What's up, Larry?
Hi, Bill. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, you're welcome here anytime. People
Oh,
really enjoy our conversations.
Well, before we start, there's one thing I want to clear up that I said during our last podcast, and if it's okay with you, I'll clear that up right now.
Yeah.
All right. During the last podcast, I mentioned that that Tannenbaum, the guy that threw me out of Yonkers Raceway for no reason. I mentioned that at my father's funeral, I sent a couple of guys to find him, and that I would kill him. I just want people to know that I'm not a killer. I'm not. I'm not that. But sometimes things happen, and even up to today, I feel I feel what he did, and very few people understand it because I get every week I get at least 2 or 3 phone calls and texts asking me, um, 2 wrongs don't make a right, and all that kind of stuff. So I just want to explain a little bit what happened, and maybe the people who could put themselves in my shoes, and and above all, I want them to know that I said what I said, and I probably would have done what I said I was going to do, um, but I'm not a killer. Years ago, when I was a kid, I was 14, 15, and all I would do was walk around saying, I'll kill that motherfucker. I'll kill. And one day, an old friend of mine, an old wise guy, an old Marine guy, he come up to me and he said, Larry, he says, I watch you grow up. He says, and maybe I'm missing something, but how many guys have you killed so far? And I said, none. And he says, well, stop saying that you're going to kill him. Just stop saying that because you sound like a jerk off. And I stopped saying that until this situation. Now, let me tell you what happened real quick. I was going 100% straight. I had a bad life. I was a bad kid all the way up until I met with Tommy Lucchese. He put me on the right track. I did everything 100% legit. He gave me money. I bought horses with that money. I raced at Roosevelt Raceway the first year I was in the business. I think it was in 63 or 64. And I did well. I believe I won 7 out of the first 8 races against the top guys in the country, and I was just an apprentice. I got a full-page write-up. All the top guys there gave me nothing but praise. I was so happy. I was doing good, and it was a complete reversal from the life and the things I did before. Then I went to Yonkers Raceway, and I got accused of doing something I didn't do and something I would never do because I would never break my word to Tommy Lucchese, who was Three Finger Brown, one of the founding members of Casa Nostra in Manhattan. I think all you people know that. So anyway, he accused me. The owner of the racetrack was Marty Tannenbaum. He accused me of doing something I did not do, stiffing a horse. I did not do it. I wasn't guilty of it, and I would never do it, especially at that time where
What's
I was
stiffing a horse? You want to tell the people what that means?
stiffing a horse means I didn't try to win. I just held them back.
Okay.
And that was not the case. I was locked in. I had no place to go, no room to go. It was just like driving a car around a racetrack. If there's cars surrounding you, you have nowhere to go, and that's what happened. That's what happened to me.
Yeah, you get boxed in, kind of,
I got
right?
boxed in, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
I got boxed in. So he had. I found all of this out later. He found, and everything I'm telling you is documented, and even years later, it was in all the newspapers. pertaining what a bad guy he was. He was an extremely wealthy guy, him and his brothers, with major political connections in the Democratic Party, with all his wheeling and dealing and charges against him of defrauding the public and everything else. Because of his connections, he was still able to keep the racetrack. And he was partners with a big bettor at the track called Morty Finder. And I learned all of this from Morty Finder because more than 10, 15 years later, Morty Finder became a big owner of mine. And we became friends. And then he told me this story, which I had no idea. So anyway, they bet on my horse that night, and naturally I got beat, and he threw me out of the racetrack. Now, when he threw me out of the racetrack, I had nowhere to go, and a series of events happened. What people don't understand is that sometimes people like Tannenbaum say things that cause it's like cause and effect. They say things, and then everything you say it has an effect, and this effect caused me to go out of town in all the small racetracks, and basically starve to death. Because the horses that I bought with Tommy Lucchese's money, they were too good to race at these racetracks, so they had no races for them. So all I was doing basically was stabling them there. And what happened, I'll have to make this quick because it's too long of a story. So what happened was I wound up getting myself in a little trouble because of one of Whitey Bulger's guys that came to me and wanted to help me when I got to Lincoln Downs. Because of that situation and relationship, I got myself in a lot of trouble, and I started betting sports. I got it. It became such an addiction that it basically destroyed my life at that point. And I started fixing races. And the money I was winning fixing races, I was losing betting sports. And one day, and during this time, my father, who completely idolized me, my father stayed with me from every, no matter where I was in the country. He would show up after 1 or 2 days a week and bring me his whole pay so I could eat. And that's how my father was. When my mother was trying to put me on the right track and beating me, my father was the one that stepped in just before she killed me.
Just before the final blow, right?
It was, and that was my father, and he idolized me. When I was at Roosevelt Raceway, when I was put on that pedestal and doing really good, my father and my mother were the proudest parents in the whole world. That they took a kid that was doomed for nothing but bad, and turned into a real good kid with write-ups, my pictures in the paper, everybody talking good about me. So anyway,
let me ask you this, Larry. Did Lucchese find out about this situation? And if he did, what did he say about it?
Well, Lucchese, the reason I got stalls at Roosevelt when I first got my license was because I applied for stalls at Roosevelt Raceway, which at the time was the biggest racetrack in the country, that Roosevelt and Yonkers, and all the best drivers and trainers and horses in the world were at them tracks. So when I applied for stalls, they denied me because I was basically an apprentice, and they didn't know who I was, and stalls were limited.
Yeah.
So I called up my mother. I says, "Ma, I took Tommy's money, and they won't give me stalls." And the bottom line was he made a phone call, and I got my stalls. Now the reason I got the stalls was because the Roosevelt Raceway was owned by Morton Levy. Morton Levy was the attorney for Frank Costello and all the mob guys. So that was not a problem. But when this situation happened in Yonkers, I called up my mother and I says, "Ma, they threw me out of the racetrack, and I swear I didn't do anything wrong." And she says, "Well, I can't ask Tommy to help. He's in the hospital with a malignant brain tumor, of which he died from about a year later. So I couldn't bother him, which sent me to all these smaller racetracks. And after 3-4 years of eating pigeons and bran mashes and grass and everything else, and losing about 40 pounds, I got to meet Tony Shula, and then I'll pick it up from where. All right, so now I develop a terrible gambling habit because of Shula, but because of Shula, I start fixing races because that's what they did. He was with Whitey Bulger. They controlled all the New England tracks, and this was the first time they had harness racing at Lincoln Downs, and he didn't know anybody, so they came to me because of my Italian last name. So through Tony Schuler, I developed a terrible gambling habit because he was fixing college games, and I just got involved in that whole thing. Make a long story short, by 1971, 72, I guess it was, I lost close to $1 million that I had made fixing races. I lost it all to bookmakers betting sports. At this time, simultaneously, my father came to the racetrack every chance he get, no matter where I was, and he was so proud of me, and he just loved me to death, and he would just sit there and stare at me, working, and so when I got thrown out of Yonkers, and I went to all of these racetracks, I well, I'll jump ahead to 72. The story gets too involved. So now in 72, 73, I'm really jammed up. I lost $1 million that I made fixing races to bookmakers betting sports. And I really got jammed up. And I went to my mother one day and I said, "Mom, I'm in a lot of trouble. Can you help me out?" Knowing that Tommy Lucchese had bought me mutual funds for me and her years back. And she said, I told her the trouble I was in, and it was a good shot. I could probably get killed. And she said to me, "I will sell everything I have to get you out of this trouble, but you have to tell your father that he has to go back to work. He can't be following you all around. I'm working 2-3 jobs now. I'm working 2 jobs and doing homework at home. And I need help." So I went to my father, and she did. She sold all the insurance policies. She had life insurance and for on my father and her, and cashed in all the mutual funds that Tommy Lucchese bought for me and her. But I had to tell my father to go back to work. I did. It broke his heart. I made up a lie saying that the racing commission didn't want and it broke his heart. And instead of going back to work, he was so heartbroken that he sat in the chair, and for 7 days and 7 nights never left. And one morning, when my brother found him, he was dead in the chair, and he died of a broken heart. And that, okay. Some people say, "Well, I shouldn't have been gambling, and that wouldn't have happened." But if Tannenbaum didn't throw me out, I probably would have been in the Hall of Fame. I would have went straight ahead. I was doing really well. Everybody wanted me to train and drive their horses. And what Tannenbaum, when he threw me out of a racetrack, the effect of that was everything that I went through, and my father dying at the age of 53 of a broken heart. Now, I don't care what anybody says, and a lot of people blaming me, but that's the story. Had Tannenbaum not barred me for absolutely no reason, he became the judge and jury without a hearing, without even calling me in and asking me. He just threw me out, destroyed my whole life, and killed my father. That's how I feel. And on top of it, he wasn't a good guy anyway. He was a bad guy. What he accused me of, that I was innocent of, he did 1,000 times worse. So anyway, I just want to clear that up. I'm not a killer. I'm not a tough guy. I'm not a wise guy. I just did what I did. But for that, and um, I probably would have killed him. So I just want to clear that up. Okay, what do you want to talk about?
So there's a whole lot going on out there. There was that big fire that happened at the Raceway. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, I heard about it. I think it was at Toyota, and these things happen. It usually happens from hot water heaters that are left on, or heaters that they plug in, and the wires get too hot because
There's hay and all that stuff, right?
yeah, and then
Around.
yeah, and then it's a tinderbox. There's hay and straw all over the place, and it's just unfortunate. And a good friend of mine, I told in one of my podcasts that 30 horses died in a fire. And years back, my good friend Freddie Hudson went out at Roosevelt Raceway. They had a fire and his whole barn burned. I mean, maybe 15, 20 horses. I come in the morning and they were all horses burnt to death, dogs eating the meat, and it's terrible when that happens. And the sad thing is, a horse, even if you open the stall door, say the barn is burning, if you open the stall door and chase them out, they'll run back in. They think that's their home. They'll run right back into the stall.
And they're herd animals. They're herd animals. They follow one another.
It's
right?
it's just sad. I don't want to get into the animal abuse stuff, but let's get away from that because that gets me upset. Anyway, what do you? I have 300 things that I can talk about. I'm putting it back all together because the actor strike is over, and I think we're going to start this TV series pretty soon. So I have 5,000 pages here with stories on every one, and I'm still getting phone calls from things that I did with Larry Rolla stories. So I could talk about. You could mention anything, and I can talk about it.
Did you know that Joey Merlino used to be a jockey?
Yeah, I knew that.
Did you
Yeah,
know?
the guy weighed like 90 pounds when he was young, and I guess his father. Yeah, I don't know if there was any corruption there, but I just know that for a while he was a jockey. Yeah, I had nothing. I had nothing to do with him. I had nothing to do with that.
It surprises people because they're like, "Is that a Photoshop picture?" I'm like, "No, man.
No,
he was really a jockey." So
that was him. That was him.
So I want to talk about. People have been asking me to ask you about Mario Gigante.
All right, Mario Gigante, naturally everybody knows, was Vincent Gigante the Chin, his brother, and they Mario was basically the street guy, I guess you would call him, and
he had a couple brothers though. He had Louis, Mario. There was Vincent. Right?
Well, Louis was the priest, and Vincent was Chin. And Mario was the street guy, and Ralph was the other brother that basically stayed with Chin at the club. And then they had another brother that died years earlier. Mario's son Louis. Me and Louis were real good friends. Louis raced horses. Louis was an extremely talented guy. He was one of them guys that no matter what he did, he excelled at. Whether it be baseball, I love baseball, and we used to have a softball team. He was really good, and he was a good trainer and a good driver. He was a gutsy guy, and for 10 years that I raced up at Monticello, me and him were like brothers. He's a good guy. Never got involved with me because I was asked. His sons are up there. His son is up there, and his nephew, and basically leave him alone. I never got neither one of them involved in any of the things that I did. And it turned out that Louis, Mario's son, wind up going out with the sister of the girl that I was going out with, Helen. I was going out with one sister. He went out with the other. And I never forget the day we were at Mario's house. and he was planning a double wedding for me and Louie, and I'm not marrying Klein. And I just nixed that whole thing. But Mario was like a father figure to me. He was such look. I don't know anything about a street life. All I know is that when I was at the house, he was a great guy, a sharp guy, very polite, very sharp, very smart, and got me out of a couple of jams. That he's the only guy I went to one time when I was in serious trouble. There was a guy threatening my mother to blow up the house. And usually I handle them things by myself, and I never let it get that far. But there was a cousin of mine that had borrowed some money using my name with this whack job from Brooklyn. And he hung out at the 18th hole. And then the windup was that guy wound up going to jail. My cousin wound up dying. And years later, he shows up at my mother's house saying that your son owes me $20,000. And if
are you thinking when he did that, or are you thinking, the hell's this guy talking about?
Yeah, well, my cousin Joe told me. My cousin Joe, he told me what he did. So I knew about it, but when one went to jail and the other one died, and it was 3-4 years later, I completely forgot all about it. Yeah. Then I get a call from my mother, and I come home, and she tells me that this guy coming. If I don't have the money, get in touch with your son, because I'm coming back in the morning. If you don't have my $20,000, I'll burn this house down with you in it. And I drove right up to the ninth. I think it was the 19th hole or 18th hole, some bar in Brooklyn. And naturally, nobody would tell me if he was there. I forgot his name, but they didn't know if I was a cop or whatever. So I don't know. So it was that afternoon. I didn't know what to do, and I went to Mario. I had to find him. I didn't know what to do. And I told him the story, and he says, go home, stay with your mother. I went home, and about 2-3 hours later, I got a call. He says, come to the house. And I went to the house, and there that guy was. He was sitting in the chair there with a couple of Mario's friends that brought him in or whatever. And he says,
now, when you walk in, is he like nervous? Is he looking scared? Like, what's his demeanor when you walk in?
Well, he was in the chair, and Mario said, is this the guy? I looked at him. He was just sitting there. And I said, yeah. And I guess the guy thought he had a point. He was owed money. And naturally, if you owed money in that life, if I owed him money and he didn't make that threat to my mother, and we went to a sit down, he would win because I owed the money.
Yeah, but isn't it wrong for him to be threatening your mom?
Well, that's why Mario said, is that the guy? And I said, yes. And he walked over to the guy. He says, you went to his mother's house and threatened his mother? And the guy said, yeah. I couldn't find him. I didn't know where he was. He says, did you go to his mother's house and threaten his mother and threaten to burn the? And he said, yes. He says, you're even. And if you ever see him again, you turn around and walk the other way. He says, you understand? And he says, yeah. The debt is even. And he told us two guys, get him out of here. And that was the end of that. But that's the only time I ever asked anybody for any help. Normally, I try not to get myself in them situations, but when I do, I get myself out. And but that time I didn't know what to do because my mother was involved. Yeah. But he was a great man. I remember when they were sentencing him, I think he was going to go to jail for extortion or something. I wrote a long letter to the judge saying that he probably got the wrong guy because he was nothing but kind and just a good guy, just a good guy, sharp guy too, very polite, and his brother Ralph, he was a little bit different with me because I had horses with his son was Ralph, and Ralph wind up living with me for about 5 years. And I taught Ralph the whole business and everything, and I got him his trainer's license and driver's license. But there was one day when Ralph wanted to buy his first horse, and he was qualifying for his license, for his driver's license with the trotters, and and I was giving him horses to drive in qualifying races because you have to drive a certain amount of races in front of the judges in regular races to qualify to see if get approved drives. So one of the horses I gave him to drive was, I almost had the name of the horse. I forgot the name of the horse, but it was owned by Larry Kadish and Colonial Bird. And he come back after the race. He says, Larry, I really like this horse. I really like this horse. He says, I want to buy him. So
how much is the horse going for around this time?
That horse cost him $30,000. So he called up his father and he said, Dad, I got approved for my license. And it's they approved it. It's the judges approved it. Now I sent away for the application, and I'm ready to buy a horse. And I have a horse that Larry trains that I drove, and I really like him. I want to buy him. $30,000. He sends down to $30,000, and we buy the horse. So now I'm teaching Ralph all during this time. I'm teaching him how to treat lameness, how to recognize lameness, how to keep a horse happy and sound, and
lameness. What's lameness? That's just like they don't want to run. They don't want to.
Just picture Joe Namath with the bad knees.
Perfect analogy.
They all have problems, and but you and basically every horse that's racing is what they would call racehorse sound. He has problems, but you're able to maintain the problems. And that's what I was teaching Ralph. So I says, look, it's always a good idea the day before the race to poultice their front feet, because the horses race on a billboard racetrack. Billboard racetrack, I mean, like just like the street, like blacktop. It's a hard surface. You have about 1/4 inch of stone dust cushion, and that's it. And their feet are always under constant pressure. So it's a good idea the day before the race, that evening when you're putting the horse away, to put poultice on his feet. The poultice draws out all the heat and soreness. Whether it's there or not, it's always a good idea. Now, the only way to keep a foot poultice is the big burlap bags, and you put the poultice on a foot, and then you put a burlap bag, the foot into a burlap bag, and then you bring it halfway up the leg, and you bandage it at that point, and it stays in place all night. Well, what happened was we did that. So what happened was one of the kids that were from that neighborhood called up. Somehow word got to Ralph Gigante's father in New York. We were at Florida at the time, at Pompano Park, and all of a sudden the next day, the word got back that I sold Ralph a lame horse. He's standing in the stall with these big boots on him, and so that's why I found this out later, because the next morning, the morning of the race,
I'm on an interview. Call me back.
The morning of the race,
sorry about that.
Pulls up, and who gets out of the car but Ralph's father, Ralph Gigante Sr.
Did he look mad when he got out of the car?
Well, at that time, I'll never forget this. He had a crew haircut, and he looked. You could. He looked. Yeah. They have that stern look, and so Ralphie says to him, "Dad, what are you doing here?" He says, "Larry, get in the office." So I go in the office, and he says to me, you sold my son that horse? I says, yeah. He says, "You sold my son a lame fucking horse." I says, "He's not lame. He's a nice horse." He says, "What's he doing with them? I heard that he's standing in big boots and everything else." And I says, that's just a poultice. It's nothing. The horse is fine. He says, "He's fine." He says, "Well, he's fine. He better win. He's in the race tonight. I'm here to watch the race. This fucking horse don't win. You got a problem."
Oh
And
man.
so as nice as and I can understand that. I can understand that the Ralphie at the time was, I don't know, maybe 20, 21 years old. He's under my care. He's living with me. And now the father thinks that I fucked him.
Like you're taking advantage of him.
Yeah, so I can understand that, but the it's one thing to go out there in a race, which is, you never know what's going to happen. First of all, it's dangerous as hell. You got to have a lot of guts, and that's why all these drivers that drive these horses, and even the jockeys too, you got to basically be fearless, and it's scary. I mean, you're going into the first turn at 35 miles an hour, and you inches apart. Your wheels are inches apart. You got say you're surrounded by 7, 8 other horses, and
dirt's flying up in your face. The wind
yeah,
flying by
scary.
you.
And then this, you got to know what you're doing. You got to know the other horses in the race. You got to make the right moves. You got to, it becomes a strategic affair. And then on top of everything, if you don't win the race, you're going to get your fucking head blown off. So it all kind of piles up. It's tough enough as it is, but so anyway, I understand what he did. He did apologize for acting the way he acted. Ralph assured him that, but who knows if I didn't win the race? I wound up winning the race.
Oh yeah, I was going to ask, did you
But
win the race?
Who knows what would have happened if I didn't win? But
After you win, what was his demeanor after you win the race?
He was happy, and not only that, but the following week, Ralph got his license in the mail, and his driver's license. So I entered the horse, and he was going to drive him, his first drive ever. And the father came down again. No, I don't think the father did come down. Anyway, Ralph wins. I think the horse paid over $100. Ralph wins the race. He was so happy. So the father was there was never a problem. There was never a problem after that. But getting back to Mario Gigante, he was to me, he was a father figure, somebody I respected, always nice, polite, just a good guy. And as far as dressing, I mean, everybody says John Gotti dressed good, and the three best dresses to me were maybe four. John Gotti, Tough Tony Federici from Corona, Mario, and maybe Joe Watts. They're very, very sharp guys. Very, very sharp dressers.
Expensive suits, like
really
attention to detail, right?
Cufflinks
and
yeah.
I mean, whatever happened to that? People taking pride in their appearance. Like, whatever happened to that?
I don't know. I remember years ago, whenever I had to go into the grandstand, if I wasn't racing, I always wore a sport jacket and a pair of slacks. Now everybody goes there with shorts and sweatpants, and I just change the times. I guess I don't know.
I'm not changing with the times. I'm going back in time. I like to look sharp, man. I like to,
Well, I was never. whenever the fashions come and go, they come and go without me. I kept my hair the same since I was born. This is it. I mean, I lost everything on top, but I always comb my hair the same way, short, neat, no long hair, no beards, no nothing. I just stayed the same. I just had, like I said many times, I never joined the mob, even though I had many opportunities. I never joined the mob because I could never follow the leader. I could never take orders from anybody.
Yeah.
And in the same way, I could never. I mean, I could never just grow my hair long because the Beatles showed up, and I just can't do that. I am what I am, and I'm strange, and I know I'm different than 99% of the guys out there, but that's me. And I'm 83 years old, so I guess the standards that I live by. And that's basically be respectful and show up, and you live to be long as the genes are there.
Yeah. So now I want to talk to you about when you first met James Gandolfini.
Yeah.
A lot of people are they love to hear stories about him. Can you tell me about the first time you met him?
Well, I had just gotten my license back, because I was barred in '84. But anyway, I got my license back years and years later, 20 years later.
That was
And
the whole situation with your mom, right? When you got the ticket, because she's like, "Hey, you're gonna bet with that boy?"
Yeah. Yeah. So that was in '84, and years later, I got my license back. And I lived a couple of minutes from Meadowlands Racetrack, and they had a barn area at the time where you could stable your horses. So just to keep busy, I went into thoroughbred business for a short period of time. That's a good story how I started out there, and then I ended up back with the harness horses. If I remember, I'll get into that because that's a pretty good story. But I had a couple of horses at the Meadowlands, and I get a call one day from James Gandolfini, and it was probably because of Frankie Vincent, who was on that show, and he knew I trained horses. In fact, he wrote the foreword for my book.
Frank Vincent did?
Yeah, Frank Vincent. Yeah.
Rest in peace to Frank Vincent. He was a great
Yeah,
guy.
this book here. This book is the one that's well, Frank's basically responsible. One of the guys responsible for me writing this book, and he wrote the foreword to it, and he was able to send it out to.
I got my copy around here somewhere.
Yeah,
Got my copy.
That's Frank Vincent.
Yeah.
And he wrote the forward to the book. Anyway,
now Sopranos was already out when you got that phone call, right? It was already.
Oh yeah. They already did many seasons. So I get a call, and it's him, and it's Gandolfini, and he says to me, he says, Larry, he says, my father, he's up there in age, and I take him everywhere I go, and but the last couple of weeks he's failing rapidly. He don't want to eat. He won't talk no more. He won't, and it's I don't know what to do. So he says, but he loves horses. He says, would you mind if I brought him down there and maybe that would cheer him up or something? So I said, sure. So I says, bring him around noontime when all the horses are done training. And so the next day, a Porsche Cayenne pulls up with the whole side of the truck opens up, the electric tailgate, the side comes down, the lift, and here he comes out in a wheelchair, an old, he must have been 80 pounds and has a chin in his chest. And
What was it? A Porsche following a minivan or something?
Yeah, Porsche. Yeah, like a SUV, and then the whole side opened up into a ramp. Electric ramp came down, and he was able to wheel down.
Wow.
So I walk over to him, and he had all handlers around him, whatever. And I go over to him, and I says, "Hello, Mr. James Gandolfini. My name is Larry Rolla." No response. He just sat there with his chin in his chest. And I says to the groom, I says, "Go bring Osmosis out." Osmosis was a 4-year-old horse that I had racing. It was, a friend of mine owned him, and he didn't want to be a racehorse, but he was beautiful, and all he wanted to do was be petted and fed carrots. And he used to race. I raced him up. I would ship him every week up to Monticello to race, and he finished last every week. But my friend who owned him, his wife owned him, and she loved the horse, so that's why I raced him up there. He wasn't good enough to race at the Meadowlands anyway. But every week he finished last up there, but she saw him at the barn and feed him carrots, and it was her pet. But he was very gentle. So I says to the groom, "Bring him out here." So she brings the horse out here, and I get the horse and I put his head right into Gandolfini's lap. And all of a sudden, his hand starts coming up, and his head comes up, and he starts petting the horse. And within a minute, he has his two nice horsey. And I says, "The horse seems to like you." And he says, "What's his name?" And I says, "His name is Osmosis." Now he's starting, "Good, Osmosis, good." I says, "Listen," I said, we have to train him," which was all a lie. I said, "We have to train him today. Would you like to help me train him?" And he says, yeah. So I tell the groom, I says, "Go harness him up." So he harnesses him up. He brings him back out, hook up to a little jog cart. And I says, "Okay, are you ready?" And he says, "Yeah." Now he's sitting in his wheelchair. He's sitting erect. And so
Yeah, totally different person, right?
I pick him up and I put him on the jog cart, and I get the lines, the reins, and I put them in his hands. And I says, I think we should put a helmet on you, huh? Just in case. And he says, "Okay." So now we got pictures of these. In fact, I think these pictures are right in my book, but they should be on my website. But I have a website too. But it's there's a lot of information on there, but none of the pictures. I never had time to put all the pictures. I got 1,000 pictures I want to put up there. But
you could send me whatever, and I'll put them into this video.
I should. I didn't know we were going to talk about this, but I should have sent you all the pictures.
I can edit them into it after. I'll put them in.
All right, I could send you the pictures.
Cool.
He's and then he's sitting in the jog cart with the lines in his hands, and I have the groom walk up and down the shed row, up and down. And after about maybe 20 minutes, I says, "Okay, that's enough. We're all done." And now he's happy and everything. I pick him up, I put him back in a wheelchair, and now he says, "When is he going to race?" So I said, "He's not into race yet." And the groom, not knowing, I didn't want to tell him. He says, "Yeah, he's in the race Friday, I think, at Monticello." And I says, no. And the groom says, "Yes, he is. Here's the program." I didn't want to tell him because I know he would want to go watch the race, and the horse finishes last every week. So the groom keeps pushing him, and then he brings out the program, and sure enough, he's racing. I says, "Oh, yeah, that's right. He's racing." I says, "But you can't watch him race." He says, "No, I got to watch him race. I says, "No, he's racing in Monticello. That's 100 miles from here." And he says, No, Jimmy, you take me over here to simulcasting. He already knew Meadowlands has simulcasting in Monticello. So I says, "Oh, God." So I said, "This poor guy's going to be heartbroken. This horse finishes last every week." So that Friday, I get in my car and I go up to Monticello. Now, the leading driver at the track, Billy Parker, he's a Hall of Famer, and he used to drive this horse for me because he was a good friend. And I said, look, just take him. He's you don't want to be a racehorse. He finishes. Just don't abuse him. And he did. He just take him around the racetrack, finish last, and that would be it. And so I drive up to Monticello, and I get a hold of Billy. And I said, Billy, you ever watch The Sopranos? He says, yeah, that's my favorite show. And I tell him the whole story. And I says, so this Jimmy's father he thinks he trained this horse, and he's watching this race. So the bottom line is you got to win. And Jimmy says, and Billy Parker says to me, just like, what are you, fucking nuts? How's he gonna how the fuck are we gonna do this? I says, you figure it out. Choreograph the race, do whatever you have to do. This horse has to win. And I says, and if he wins, I just said he has to. Okay, so now I go to the grandstand and I get a hold of the track photographer. And I says to the track photographer who takes the winner circle pictures, I says, listen, if this horse is in contention from the head of the stretch to the wire, just keep snapping pictures of him. So sure enough, the race goes off, and he wins. He wins, and I go to the photographer after that, and that's where you know that the winner circle pictures are all computerized because they print in on the pic, whatever they want to print in on the computer. Yeah. And I made him put in on the top of the picture, which I'll send you. And I think it's in the book. I'm not sure. I don't remember. A special thanks to James Gandolfini. Without his help, this win wouldn't be possible.
It's true, right?
And then it had all the other information on it, and I had that picture blown up to maybe I don't know, maybe a 20 by 30 thing, and put it in a big frame. It cost me about $500 to have it sealed because they like shrink wrap it so no air can get in there, in a beautiful frame. And I had bet $100 for him on the horse. So I took the ticket and I put it in the frame, and I had the frame wrapped, and I sent it to him. And I went to Florida, and I went to Florida, and I come back maybe 6 months later. I usually go from November till April. And I get a message saying that Gandolfini wants to see me. So I shoot over there. In the meantime, I found out that he had just recently died, the old man. And around his coffin where he was laid out, they had all the pictures that were taken at that time, all the pictures around. And in the Bada Bing Club, which is a club where I never watched The Sopranos, but they say there's his office in the Bada Bing Club. He had a thoroughbred picture up there. He took that down and put that picture up, and that was it. And so Gandolfini sent for me, and I went to him. I spent the day with him, and we took some pictures together. And he thanked me. He said that his father, he died of natural causes, but he began eating again. He was old, and that whole thing changed his whole life around. And he says that he asked me if it would be all right if he brought his son down. His son was, I think his son was 7 or 8, 9 years old at the time. So I said, sure. As soon as the horses ship back up this way, you'll bring your son. And so anyway, that's Gandolfini's story, and he wound up dying. He wound up getting married and and dying soon after. He had a big weight problem, always losing weight, gaining weight, losing.
Yeah.
But he was a real nice guy and very appreciative for what.
Shout out to his son. I'm gonna reach out to his son and see if he remembers stuff.
Yeah,
Maybe he'll come on. Maybe he'll come on.
In fact, his son. Well, I tried to reach his son one time, a few years back, and I have to tell you that whole Hollywood, and I'm hoping that my TV series, and it will go, but that whole Hollywood, you have to know this, so what I'm saying makes sense. In 2018, I was convinced to write that book that I just showed you before. Frank Collada convinced me to write it, so I wrote it, and it was sent out to California, and right away Sony Pictures and Village Roadshow. Village Roadshow is the largest distribution of film and TV in the whole country. They deal with 180 countries. And they sent for me right away, and I went out there, and we had a big lunch and everything. And after the whole thing was over, Steve Moscow, who's the head of Village Roadshow, says, "Okay, lawyer up." I lawyer up. I'll make this real quick. I lawyer up. After 3-4 months, the contracts are signed for 2 contracts, one for a movie and one for a TV series. The movie was going to be $100 million budget movie, which I was going to get 2.5% right up front, which I wanted because at the time I was 80 years old, and 2.5 million, I was going to get 2% right, 2.5% right up front, and that 2.5 million would have it would have been nice.
You would have had a great life.
Yeah, and so what happened was I had Nicholas Pileggi, who wrote Casino and Goodfellas. They were him and Richard Price, who wrote The Wire and all them good TV series. They were the writers.
Yeah.
And also Ed Burns, the actor and writer. So they were the writers. Anyway, make a long story short, 2020, we were supposed to fly out there, and COVID hit. They shut California down. 2.5 years later, 2 years later, they opened California back up. But by then, they had paid me for the rights to my life story. They had an option for 16 months. And that 16 months ran out because of COVID. So they asked me to resign. I said, I'll resign if you get right to it. And they said they couldn't promise that because they had a lot of other projects. They were in the middle of it. And so I didn't resign. But that little experience that I had living out there, and I had lived out there in California years before in 1980, 1989, 1990. And I had to leave. You grow up in a certain way around certain people, and then you go to California, and it's like a fairy tale. It's like Alice in Wonderland. Nobody tells the truth. It's all bullshit. It's all I love you and we'll have dinner, and like nothing means nothing. And it's all about the money and who's attached to the project. And I never forget. I never forget the time I went out to California with a friend of mine, Al Leone. He was a Italian movie producer, maker, actor. He had offices in Rome for 30 years. And he had an Italian film that called Rabbit Dog or something like that. Anyway, a major studio wanted to remake it. It was from 50 years ago. And they wanted to redo it. It was a great film. And do the English version of it with all. And so I went out there with him, and we're sitting in this executive's office. And there's the executive on one desk and the secretary at the other desk. And I was sitting one seat back from Al, alongside of Al, and they were negotiating to remake this movie. And while they're talking, another girl comes in with a screenplay. with envelopes, and the secretary opens the envelopes, and there were 2 or 3 envelopes with screenplays in them. And she takes the screenplays, she looks who it's from, and she puts one aside and the other 2 up against the wall. Now, up against the wall, it was probably a 10-foot ceiling, and from floor to ceiling, there were screenplays, one on top of another, the whole length of the wall. And she puts this on one of the piles.
Yeah.
So after that meeting, we went to lunch, and I was sitting next to her, across from her, and Al was sitting across from the big shot. And I says, were they screenplays that, she says, yeah. And I says, how come you put 2? She says, look, we get 10, 15 a day. She says, and even though they're not solicited, because we don't accept any unsolicited material, if they don't have a major, first we see who they're from, and if they don't have a major star attached to the screenplay, we're not interested. We don't even read it. So the one I kept on my desk was attached to a major star, and they had a little synopsis about a paragraph, and I read it real quick. And this is something we're going to take a look at. And I realized then that getting something done over there in California, you have to have a major connection with a major star attached. If not, all you're going to get is bullshit, and I love you, and I love it, and we'll hook up, and all the nonsense.
You're the best, and you're the greatest.
Oh,
you're so talented. But
so even though this is, I wound up back in this business, not in the business, but they're interested in the story, my story. They're just different people. And the reason why they love this mob genre so much is because they never been involved in it. It's fascinating to them. And so, it's like cowboys and Indians compared to having tea at the White House or something. It's just, they're fascinating. I never forget when I was out there, I used to have lunch with Milton Berle every day at the Friars Club. He was a friar, the abbot or whatever they call the chief guy. And we got along really well. And I used to love to have lunch with him because he'd tell me stories about all these famous movie stars and who was fucking who and that whole bit. It was unbelievable. I got a kick out of it. Very, very entertaining for me. So I forgot why.
Talking about the screenplay, about the woman. You guys are out at lunch, and how everyone's basically talking shit behind people's backs. And
Bill, let me tell you something. You're probably half my age. You see how I am now? This is how you're going to be. So make your fortune early. Have fun, because this is going to happen. I did a podcast the other day, one of my own on my podcast, and I'm talking about a mob guy called Danny Marino. Now, I know he's with the Gambino crew, and I says, yeah, Danny Marino, a Genovese guy. I mean, and that's out there. It's out there. And people have to say, who's this guy? He has no idea what he's doing. I make these mistakes, and it just, I really shouldn't be doing what I'm doing, because if I don't go straight ahead with a story and I stop and go in a different, I never come. I just don't. I just don't remember. So I have no idea why I was talking with Milton Berle, why I went into that thing. But
about them doing the story. You said, why did they put those screenplays on the top? Remember?
Oh, because if you don't have a major, a
An
major,
actor attached to the thing. That's what you were explaining.
right. And
Yeah.
probably the best thing to do is if you have a screenplay that's pretty good, and you have access to one of the top actors, which you never really do, because first you have to go through their agent. And if you're not a major guy, their agent never gets the message to them. So you have to have the ability to have contact with this guy, and then say, listen, I'll give you $200,000 if you let me use your name to raise the money, or so this thing has a good shot of getting made. And if it don't get made, you keep the 200,000. That's what you go through, unless your brother is Tom Hanks or something like that. But that's the bullshit you got to go through. I'll never forget the time. My friend, his daughter made a movie called Once Upon a Time in Queens.
I've seen that movie.
Well, the name was last I heard, that was the first name. Then they changed it to Once Upon a Time in Queens. It never went nowhere, and the reason it never went anywhere was because the last minute. In fact, the night before they were supposed to start shooting, they get a phone call. We're having dinner, and they get a phone call saying that the major backer backed out. He the money that he wired in, I don't know, 5-10 million. It was. So now we're sitting there. It was about 8:00 at night, and all the actors are in. Paul Savino has moved in with his daughter Mia in Manhattan.
Vincent Pastore's in it, right? All these guys were in it.
Well, Vincent Pastore wasn't in it, but
the other guy, Frank, was, right?
I forget who was in it. And this is how bad I'm getting, because that night they had to cancel all the limousines that went to pick up all these actors. And they canceled all of that, and they think, so now I volunteered. I says, look, if there's anything I can do, I'll do it. So they says, okay, you go pick up Michael Rappaport and pick up Paul Savino.
Paul Savino, Michael Rappaport, Renee's Props, Kevin Kelly, Chaz Palminteri,
Right.
Andrea Natoli, Paul Victor.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I tell you, it was a good movie. But being I got into this, let me finish the story. Yeah. So now we get into now we have no money, no nothing, and the first day of shooting, and I have to go pick up the two of them. But I had to pick up Paul at 6:00, and I had to pick up Michael at 8:00 and bring him into Queens. So that means I pick up Paul at 5:00, drive him into Queens, then come back at 8:00 and pick up Rappaport. They both stayed in Manhattan, and they both were on the same street. I can't think of the street, 80-something street. But one lived on one end, one lived on the east side, one lived all the way on the west side. So that's what I did. Let me just tell you about Paul Savino. I don't know if I ever told you this before or not. No. See, I'm starting to reel off, but just remember where I was. I pick up Paul Savino. It's supposed to be ready at 6:00. I'm there at 5:30, so I'm waiting. And 6:15. Now I'm smoking. I'm mad. It's like I'm a fucking mutt to this guy that I'm doing a favor for. Yeah. So finally he comes out. I'm in the driver's seat already. I put the window, and I recognize who he was because he's an actor. I saw him, and I says, Paul, I'm your guy. Come on. So he gets in the car, and he says to me, you got Sirius Radio? And I did. I had Sinatra on the Sinatra channel. He says, would you mind putting on channel 77 or whatever it was? I turned and said, it's opera. I says, it's opera. He says, yeah. He says, that's my whole life. I never wanted to be an actor. I want to be an opera singer and this and that. And he says, my life was completely, acting was the farthest thing. I could have been a professional pool player. I beat Minnesota Fats. I beat this guy. I beat that guy. He said, I love sculpture. I have sculptures all over the world. I'm the eyes. Nobody does sculpture eyes like me. Pavarotti said I have a voice equal to his. And I says, Paul, you got to do me a favor, Paul. I said, and now we're just going through. I think we're just going through Central Park. I don't remember, but I says, Paul, you got to do me a favor. I says, I'm going to be driving you every day for a while. You can't talk to me like I'm a fucking jerk off. He says, stop the car. I thought he was going to get out because I insulted him. So I stopped the car. He takes his phone out and he shows me all the sculptures that he did. He has a warehouse where he does the sculpture in. He shows me newspaper clippings where he really beat Willie Mosconi and Minnesota Fats. He showed a thing where he was, and the only reason he didn't pursue the opera was because he has asthma, and he could never go through a whole show.
Yeah.
So he proved to me, and I said, "All right, Paul, I apologize." He's an extremely bright, talented guy. Paul is. Okay, so now, see, I lost it.
You were
again.
You were driving Paul to the
I drive. Yeah, I drive him. I drive him there, and it's unbelievable. But we were able to raise $1 million, and with $1 million, they made this movie with all the stars that you said, and it's a real good movie. What the movie is about, it's about Paul Sorvino, who's a mob boss. He goes to jail for 20 years. When he went to jail, his daughter was just born. He gets out of jail 20 years later, and he meets with his daughter, and they're in the park one day, and his daughter says, Dad, I have to talk to you. I have to tell you something. And he confesses to her that she's a lesbian. Now, that in the mob, you know that whole story. And it's a really, really good, story, movie.
Sounds like Rita Gigante's situation, doesn't it?
Yeah. In fact, I was just with her about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I was talking with her. Anyway, where was I, Bill?
They raised $1 million for that.
Okay, so here's the moral of that story. They made the movie. They edited them themselves, and if you ever watch it, it's called, and I think it's on YouTube. You could probably get it almost anywhere. It's called Once Upon a Time in Queens. They made that for under $1 million, but the problem was they had no money for marketing. So when you make a movie for distribution, when you make a movie for $10 million, you better have $10 million for distribution. Without distribution, it goes right into the drawer. And that's what happened. They tried to get it in a couple of places, but it was without distribution, you're a dead man. So
what happened when you picked up Rappaport? You didn't explain that story when you.
No, Rappaport was quite a character. Rappaport, he would first of all, he hated Paul Sorvino because Paul would, when we used to go out to lunch, Paul would break out singing opera and embarrass everybody, and Rappaport just couldn't stand him. After a while, he couldn't stand him. So I could never drive both of them home together. But Rappaport was, after the workday was over, he went to all the basketball games. He was a basketball freak. He loved basketball.
Yeah.
And he also loved strange people. He would, if he, when we were standing outside for breaks or whatever, if he saw a weird person walking down, it could be a hunchback man, it could be anybody, he would stop and talk to them, take pictures, and there he was just nice enough guy, but just just different. The guy that I liked the most, that really impressed me, was a guy Bauer. What the hell's his name? He was the one that played in the picture that Al Pacino played Scarface. He was the guy that went out with his sister. Leo, no, Bauer. What the hell is that? An actor, Bauer.
Stephen Bauer.
Who?
Stephen Bauer.
Stephen Bauer. Yeah,
Yeah.
that guy is really really good. He was he impressed me the most of all of them.
Andrea Navedo.
She was good. She's that
gorgeous.
Spanish girl.
Absolutely gorgeous, man.
Yeah, she was pretty. We got to talk a little bit at the after. They have a party after, and she was dancing with the director. I forgot his name. He died, but yeah, she was beautiful, good, great dancer too, and good actor. That movie, it's sad that they had no distribution, because that was a good movie. Some night when you're not doing nothing, try to get it. It's called Once Upon a Time in Queens. The original
I have
name.
the picture right here of the front of the movie. Here's a poster of it.
And it's amazing how my friend, because my friend Alfred Natoli, it was his daughter that made the movie, Andrea, and her husband, and how they got this done with $1 million. It's unbelievable. At the last second too. It's not that they had planned for it. It was just unbelievable. And to me, it was a real good movie. All right.
Sometimes things like that fall through. You know, they got a thing going on, and like you said, the investor will back out or something will happen. And today I have a meeting at 1:00 with some Hollywood people, because I'm going to be on network television very soon. I've been working and grinding, and I got a meeting with some people, and we got a few more minutes. But yeah, did you know I wrote a script?
No.
Yeah.
Oh, that's another thing I wanted to say. Everybody, when I was at that set at the movie, it took a few months to make. I think only 2. I think we made it in less than in right around a month. Every actor has a script. Everybody has a script. You just can't get it made. There's a million scripts out there, and unless you have a major, the story could also be unbelievable. But I remember the series of events that happened. First, they wanted a script, and it was so crazy, because you have 3 holes in the paper, and if the thing, that the fastener, you can't put 3 in, you got to put 2 in, 1 in the top and 1 in the bottom, or one of the, and if it wasn't like that, they would recognize that somebody that didn't know what they do and they just disregarded. So even the way it's stapled has to be together. Then they wanted a little synopsis. It could be a page long or a half a page long. And now I think they want a little film. They want like a little teaser or something.
Yeah.
What they want always changes. And if you're lucky enough to have it looked at, you're a lucky guy. So I hope that you're successful, because it's very, very, very difficult.
Well, I have a major actor attached to it. I have a great script. I have a couple major actors that agreed, and we'll see if I can get it done. It's not like no $100 million blockbuster. It's just like, something that I think I can do. Hold on a second. My mom's calling again. Damn it. Hello? Are you still on the show? Yeah. Okay. Okay, bye. All right. So yeah, man, there's a lot of good things in the future. And besides the TV show, are you got any other plans with movies or anything like that? Or are you just gonna try to go
No,
through with this?
the original thought for my thing was going to be a movie, but then once I talked with Nicholas Pileggi and Richard Price and
Just too
well,
much. It's too much, right? To put
it's
into all that.
too much material because
Yeah.
once they thought it was just what's in the book. What's in the book is 10% of my life, and each chapter is 10% of that story. So it goes on forever. I have oh God, I have books and books and there's tons of stuff. The pile I just showed up, I have 4 more piles plus 2 big books plus 2 big briefcases. Because when I started, I was making phone calls to all the people I was involved with and say, you know, any stories I was involved, and all of a sudden here they come, thousands and thousands and thousands, and that's it. That's why when you says you have Pileggi says this can't be a movie, you know, it just can't be. He says even if you write 400 voiceovers, the movie will still be 7-8 hours long. So it has to be a TV series. And lucky enough, the guy that's doing it now, Barry O'Brien, he's the writer for
Law and Order, right? Yeah.
He wants to do a TV series. So that's good. So it's going to be a TV series. I just have to get all this stuff together. The only thing is I'm losing my mind. I don't remember nothing. And I just hope it gets done.
Just remember this: there's no job too small for Bill Staxx. I'll go there and sweep the floor if I got to. Like, I don't care. I'll go there and sweep
You sound
the
like
floor.
you're on your way pretty good. In fact, I know that all them guys that have podcasts, Larry Mazza, he's been trying to get. He has a unique story. His story is unique. It's different from all the other guys. And that's why Pileggi and them were very interested. And he has some heavyweight people now. And what's holding him up was the writer's strike and then the actor's strike, which is both now over. And I wish him a lot of success. But it's very, very tough. Everything has to line up perfect, and it's extremely difficult. There's a lot of networks now because of streaming that are looking for content.
Difficult, but not impossible, Larry. Difficult, but not impossible.
Yeah. Well, I wish I was your age. You know, I wish I was your age because you're the kind of guy I could see that never gives up. It's just you just whatever you're going to do it to the best of your ability, 24 hours a day, and that's what makes you have a real good shot at it. My story is a little bit different. I would give my left arm and maybe my left leg to be your age, and know that there's people in Hollywood that love the life that I led and what I went through, where to me it's astonishing because to me it was just part of, well, that's just what I did. What's the big deal, you know?
Yeah, it's just your life. That's why, like, a lot of people are intrigued with my background, being a former gang member and being on the streets and doing some of the things I did. A lot of the mob guys, they're intrigued by my story, and I'm like, I don't got no crazy story. You're the guys with the crazy story, and they like it for some reason because it's different, you know.
Well, there's I have in front of me 15 different things where we could have talked about anything. I was kind of ready for you. But whatever, if you have any more questions, end it whenever you want to end it. I'll come back whenever you want.
Yeah, we'll schedule another one. I got this meeting, and this one's really important. It's about being on network television, and it's pretty important one.
Hopefully, I see you got a suit jacket on. That's good.
Yeah, I got a whole suit on, man. Even the bottom is suit today. Usually I wear pajama pants.
Well, I wish you a lot of luck. You're a hardworking kid. I just just take it easy on them guys. You don't you don't. It's I understand what you're doing, but you don't need the death threats that are going to come with that stuff. You have a future that looks kind of bright, and
Yeah.
don't get bogged down by all that nonsense and
Yeah,
bullshit.
the only thing with that, I'm just looking to have a conversation and find out what's really in these guys' minds. Like, how do they think now? And I'm not looking to get into it with them, or I'm not even it is what it is, man.
Well, if you want to take any advice from me, which I don't see why you should, but you said what you said, and rather than pursue it and wind up with lawsuits that you're going to have to defend, and bad people sending you bad things, uh, you're too young. There's too much. If this was all you had going, all right, go ahead, take a shot, go right up against the grain and fuck them and fuck whatever you want to do. I'm here. But
Yeah,
you
but
got.
they'll try to ruin your other things you got going on, right?
I think that if you said what you said, I don't know how far you're going to pursue it. But if the meeting you have today, if you really think it's going to happen, I think you should kind of back off. Just back off a
Yeah.
little bit, and just have one podcast where I say, okay, look, I call you out. There's no sense in pursuing this because you're not going to come on my show so we could talk it out. I wish you a lot of luck in all you're going to do. And hopefully you did change your life around. And I was just trying to get you to explain how, why, when, and where, and everything. That's what I would
Yeah.
do, because you're fighting a battle.
It's a good idea. It's a great idea.
Pick your fights, and why do you want to have all these guys after you? And some of these guys are really not bad. I mean, if you ever met Frank Collada, I keep mentioning him because I felt so bad for him, because for 10 years, and even when he's a tough guy, a guy that killed people and everything else. And he's a tough guy. When I was talking with him, you see his tears start to well up in his eyes and everything. And he really, 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 for 10 years, he just wanted to kill himself. And I think Larry Mazza is the same thing. They just have
personally, I don't have nothing against these guys personally. And it's not about them cooperating. It's about their attitudes and the way they act now. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Well, my mother,
they're getting arrested over and over and over, and it's just crazy.
No, I understand it. I can understand you going after that Barillo guy more so, because he's just
he spoke on my mom. He spoke on my daughter. Like, just some uncalled for stuff. He crossed the line with that, you know.
Well, probably, I don't know how I would handle it. Well, first of all, I would never put myself in that position, so I would have to handle it. But with a guy like Barillo, the only way to kind of end that, because you could never, it's just going to escalate and escalate. The best way to end it is because he's he's half your age, is just say, listen.
No, he's the same age as me. We're the same age.
Oh, yeah. Is he? Well, just say, listen, you go to the gym every day and I don't. So the best way for us to handle this is let's just have, like in the old fashioned days, a duel with pistols. We'll meet back to back, take 10 steps, turn around. And this way it's ended for once and for all, because you could never win. You could never win with a guy like him. You could never win. You could never win the argument. And it's just going to get more nasty. And the worst part is you're going to force him to say things he shouldn't be saying, which is going to get him in more trouble. And for what? You said what you said. Not only that, but you got Joe Molino, who's doing that. And let him take all the bull, because there's going to be slings and arrows coming at you.
Yeah, I mean, even if I don't go after these guys, I'm still gonna get some pushback from people that don't like me, and that's fine. I can deal with that. I'm not immune to negative comments, you know. People will still, you know how it is, regardless of how polished you are and how whatever you do, people are still not gonna agree with
I know.
everything.
I get you. I understand because I've been lucky. Out of the thousands and thousands of emails, I got one or two that basically called me a scumbag. And
Yeah. Or
what
nobody, or you're lying about this, and they don't
yeah,
know
but
shit.
I could very easily say, listen, do me a favor, where do you live? And okay, give me your address because I'm going to send you a ticket and to come to my house, my address. And I would very much like for you to say this to my face. Now, keep in mind, I'm 83 years old. I don't know how old you are, but you're going to get a
45.
free.
45.
No, I'm saying to the guy,
Oh
uh,
yeah, yeah.
I'm giving you a free round trip ticket plus plus a gift card to have dinner wherever you want to. I just would like for you to say what you just said over the phone to my face, and then you can go right back home. I just have to know that you're for real, that you're not a telephone tough guy. Just come to my house. I won't do nothing. In fact, when you get to my house, besides the fact that I'm 83, I'll have my hands handcuffed to back. Just come and tell me that to my face. And if you don't want to do that, then I will tell you the whole story, that the story that you come to the conclusion that I'm a scumbag. And if you could walk away from the situation I was in, then you're just a better man than me. Have a good day. And if you'd like the ticket, just send me your address. And I never heard from the guy since. So that's how you handle that, that stuff. Or just have a duel, a pistol duel in the middle of some lot, 2 o'clock in the morning, and fuck it. Well, one of you is gonna die, and it ends. But you
I'm
can't,
with it. Let's do
because what's
it.
going to happen is he's going to say something. Then you're going to try to up that. You're going to try to up that. You're going to try to up that, and
No,
it's
this is a one-sided thing, man. They're gonna say whatever they're gonna say, and I ignore it all. I just keep
just
doing my
hope that
thing.
your meeting today goes well, and then just kind of back off very slowly and gently, and in time they'll forget about you and let them go on their way, and you'll go on your way. You're very entrepreneurial from the rap business, and you sound, you're like a sharp guy, a smart guy, and just, but don't get into these cat fights with these guys. You just can't win. You just got to know how to just walk away.
Yeah.
You're never going to convince them that you're right. And the sad part is there's half the people that are listening to this stuff that probably agree with them. So right away you eliminate half your audience. Anyway, that's just the advice I can give you. Now, if you were my age, I could say, what do you, you want to come and fuck with me? I'm 83 years old. That makes you a real brave guy. But in the meantime, you're a fucking scumbag. You're a fucking rat. You're a motherfucker and everything else. Now, here's my address and come. You want to beat up an 83-year-old man? If not, shut the fuck up. I could say that, but I would never say that. I would never do it, because the only way to win with them guys is just to challenge them and then let them know that if you accept my challenge, you're going to be a bigger scumbag because I'm a fucking crippled old man. So leave me alone.
Hey, it'll all work out in the end. I'm not
Yeah,
worried about
sure.
them.
I would. I don't know if you're able to say this, but after your meeting today, if you can call me up and just let me know if it went well, if it looks bright, because I'm rooting for you. Anybody that works as hard as you deserves a break. But you have to know that you're in a field in a game that's a scummy fucking backstabbing game. And if you have these friends like you mentioned, a couple of good actors that are really legitimately on your side, not just like half the meetings that you have is one big circle jerk. It's a fucking joke. But I hope that's not the case with you. I wish you a lot of luck. And anytime you want, I have maybe 50,000 stories here that we could talk about.
Yeah, we'll definitely schedule another one. We'll do one this week.
How you doing with that girl?
Oh, we're doing great.
Good.
Things are great. The show Meet You on Monday. We got a new show we're going to be putting out called Reformed, where we interview people that have changed their life. You've changed your life, so we can have you on there.
I didn't change my life. Believe me. No, I will say this: if I was ever given a chance, I would love to be either in the music business or, well, that's obsolete now, or back in the horse business. That's just the most exciting thing for me, and something that I loved. I would do that. I would do that in a second, but that's never going to happen. So now I should write a book and like I'm just a has been, a used to be. Maybe I would call the book Used to Be. I used to be. But anyway, well, let me know how you make out today. Just that it was a good meeting. It went well. And that's it, because I have a meeting on Monday. That this wealthy guy from Connecticut, I don't know if he's as far up Connecticut as you are, but he wants to put together. He got in touch with me because he was going to do. He was going to make a short film, and the reason it was going to be a short film, he said, was because they're very easy. Short films, 10, 15 minutes, are easy to get into these. Into Tribeca and all of them places.
Yeah.
And they take him right away. And he wanted to have one guy sitting on a stool who was a sick, degenerate gambler that been through it all, wrecked his life, wrecked his family, won millions, lost millions, and everything else. And very much like Michael Melch, the guy who wrote that TV series called Luck. Melch, his name was. I forgot his first name. He lost $100 million betting on horses. $100 million. Anyway, they wanted a degenerate gambler that been through it all. And so they couldn't find nobody. Somebody gave them my number. And they called me, and I met with them in Manhattan. And they told me the whole thing. And they said, we're going to try to get Armand Asante to play you. And we want to hire you as the advisor. Tell him what he went through and write the script. So anyway, so I went to meet with Armand Asante, and I told him about it, and then we wind up meeting these guys in the city. So this looks like it probably happened. But then they called me again, and they said, listen, we want to put together a company. He said, I'll get together with my friends. We'll raise a lot of money, and I want to put together a production company and give major actors, whoever is hot, like a piece of the company. And this way we will attract good screenplays. They'll have a place where they can, and that's what they want to talk about. So I got together a couple of people and that they can talk to about that. And I didn't want to go. I didn't want to go because I live 7 miles from Manhattan, and it takes me 2.5 hours to get there. And then when you get there, there's no place to park your car. It's just a pain in the ass. So when he sent me this email, I says, well, good luck. I contacted who he asked me to contact. They're going to meet you there. Good luck. And then he texted me back, no, I really want you there. And that's nice because if this thing works out, I'm going to have a major part in there. But then again, I don't get that excited because, like if you face the facts, my life expectancy is maybe a few months. Where am I going?
You still got like, what are you 83? You said you got
80,
about at least.
I'm 83 and failing rapidly. So
you could probably get 10 more years out of yourself.
Yeah. Okay,
I
but
think you
anyway,
could.
so that all of that stuff is very, very, very exciting, and it's sad that it comes so late in my life, and that the whole middle part of my life, it was a struggle. It was a struggle just to stay alive, and now that I conquered that, now not like now what? It's like a dog chasing a car. He catches the car. What the fuck you do now?
Yeah.
So anyway, that's it. Just let me know how you make out if it was a good meeting. I know it's getting late. You got meeting at 1:00. You got 15
Yep.
minutes to get wherever you're going. So
Thank you so much, Larry. I appreciate you. And we're definitely going to do this again. And if you guys got any questions for Larry or a story you want him to tell, just put it in the comments.
oh, can I say one more thing? Can
Yeah,
I say this? Because my friend asked me to say this. If they would want to hear more of my stories aside from your show, can I give them how to get to my podcast?
Of course. There'll be a link in the description too for your podcast.
All right. All you have to do, folks, is go to YouTube at Larry Rolla. That's it. YouTube at Larry Rolla. I have 24 podcasts up there. Some of them are very interesting. Some of them are not so interesting, but go there. I was asked to say that.
The name of your podcast is Against All Odds, right?
Against all odds. It's if you punch in Larry YouTube Larry Rolla, it pops right up. There's 24 of them up there, and one comes up every Tuesday. I just have to figure out, and I really didn't get too much involved. I have to figure out how to get more exposure. I do have maybe 1,500 subscribers. I get lots and lots of views, but I never push because I'm always, we're always doing the movie or always doing the TV series, and then the writer's strike, and then that guy Frank Valalongo dies, and then So I really I didn't think that this was, and now that I have somebody like you that could show me how to do it and where to go and what to do, the actor strike is now over, and I get a phone call saying that you may be coming to California so it's always something that stops me from doing what I should be doing at the time. Anyway.
Just let me know. I'm here for you anytime you need me, man. I'll direct you in the right direction. We'll get things going. You could do it. You could do it all. You don't have to stay with one thing. You can do all of it and keep it together.
You got 10 minutes to get to your meeting. I'll see you.
All right, man. Thank you. If you guys like this interview, hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell so you can get my videos every time they drop. And if you don't like it, start your own podcast. Thanks, Larry.
See ya.
Later.